Hi, everyone. Welcome to GoLocal Live at the Rhode Island State House. We are here for our very first show, and my very first guest is House Majority Leader Joe Shekarchi. Joe, thanks for coming on today.
It is my pleasure. I always enjoy Go Local, but I now am honored and proud to be your first guest ever at the Rhode Island State House.
Well, we're
Thank
happy
you.
to be up here because there's so much going on right now. You can probably hear in the background, folks are coming in as we're going into session here shortly, but really want to talk with you. I just saw Majority Leader Shekarchi at the airport yesterday, and they had just announced another route for Frontier Airlines to Myrtle Beach.
3 more flights coming in. It's exciting times at the airport. Things are going very well. The growth has been tremendous and phenomenal. The team down at the airport, Jonathan Savage, the director, Iftikhar Ahmed, have done a phenomenal job. And it's about results, and they're delivering results. So the airport continues to grow. And as the airport grows, that's good for the state. It's good for the city of Warwick. So let's hope for continued success at the airport.
And there's a little caveat about that continued growth at the airport, looking to rename the airport from TF Green to Rhode Island International.
That has been proposed by the airport. I'm a sponsor of the House version. Senator McCaffrey is a sponsor of the Senate version. That bill also includes, but not many people say the second half of that bill, it also includes the renaming of the Interlink to TF Green Interlink, which is a significant infrastructure improvement. And that's probably cost more than the airport was when TF Green was originally named after the airport. So, and the reality is it's significant. It's something that the airport's marketing studies have shown will help brand the airport, help market the airport. If it helps success, I'm all for it. But I will say this, there will be hearings, and I have heard from people who do not support that, and I encourage them and I welcome them to come up to the airport, come up to the State House and talk about the airport in terms of why they think it should remain the same or they have any alternatives. It's an open process and an open dialogue.
So one of the things when I had spoken with Iftikhar when I was at the airport yesterday that he was really advocating for the name change is flights are great going out. It's really for flights coming in that people have that recognition of where it is they're flying to.
That's what they have told me, and the studies have shown it would help the airport. If we can do this and it helps the airport, I'm all in favor of it, as long as we continue to recognize the contributions that Senator Green, Governor Green has made, and by renaming the Interlink, which is a significant infrastructure project, as I said, I believe we can accomplish both.
Well, we're going to continue to keep an eye on the airport, both the renaming, additional routes moving forward. You've got airport experience.
Many years ago, I worked for the airport for a short time, well before I was an elected official, and I helped them with the expansion. The city of Warwick, 5, 6, 7 years ago, filed an appeal to a federal decision to prevent the expansion, and the airport hired me, and we were able to, within 60 days, settle that, get the federal funding, and here today, as you see, the product of that. So it's exciting.
Now we're international.
It's a great thing.
Where's your next trip to, Joe?
My next trip to Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm going to go with the speaker to a legislative conference. It's 2 days. It's a Friday and a Saturday, and we're leaving at 5:55 in the morning, so it's an early morning trip.
From Green.
From TF Green.
From Green, of course. Well, wanted to start with a couple of pieces of legislation that are important to you before we go into broader ones. Let's start with the mastectomy legislation that you're very passionate about, and this is healthcare coverage so that women can be covered to get the support and service.
It's women and men. There are men who also have breast cancer. So it's not just women specific, but it's a good piece of legislation. It's a piece of legislation that I introduced last year, and it basically updates current law. In 2007, approximately 11 years ago, the General Assembly passed legislation which said that mastectomies mandated that they be covered and 100% of that cost. Over the last 11 years, we all know healthcare has changed, both federally, by regulation, by statute, by federal procedures. So, and what's happened is it's whittled away. I've had many people contact me and said, I had to go through the cost and expense, and I thought I was covered. I found out that all the extra and ancillary equipment and medical needed devices are not covered, and they're very expensive. So I want those things to be covered, and I understand there's a cost. I'm not naive, and I know that'll be recycled into the premium, but there'll be a process for any insurance companies to recoup that, which is to go through the Department of Business Regulation to adjust their rates accordingly. I think it's important, and I think it's a cost worth bearing. It's not a taxpayer cost. It is a policyholder cost.
And how long, I mean, were you considering this, talking with people? I mean, when you put forth this legislation, what was the process that went into this?
Actually, it was something I worked on a lot last year, but it didn't come in until very at the end of the session last year. And it really wasn't enough time for people to. It's a major shift in a lot of the insurance regulations, and Blue Cross and United Health and other people had concerns about it. And what I said to them was, look, I don't think the legislation will go this year, meaning last year. And I'm hoping that I'll reintroduce it. And I did that. It was one of the first pieces of legislation that came in this year. So we'll have a hearing soon, this month of March, and we'll go through the process. And I encourage anybody who has a strong feeling about it to move forward. And I also want to point out that I have surveyed my district. It is about 99% of the constituents in my district want this kind of coverage, medical coverage.
Do we know if other states do this, or are you just myopically focused on Rhode Island?
No, I try to look at this throughout a broad sense whenever I enact new legislation, and it is the trend to have states cover this as well.
Okay, so there's a couple pieces of legislation of importance to you. Any of yours you want to mention before we move on to the broader ones?
No, that's about it. I have good jobs, jobs credit stuff. I have some stuff for Rhode Island builders. I have some stuff for the League of Cities and Towns. So all that stuff will go through the legislative process, and I hope that, I think they're all good pieces of legislation, but I have no illusions they're all going to pass, but I believe they're good legislation.
Now, you've got one, though, for the Board of Elections for transparency purposes. Talk with us a little bit about that.
The Board of Elections actually is one of the few agencies of state government that can make their own rules and regulations, and they're exempt from the Administrative Procedures Act. And this piece of legislation that I'm working collectively with Common Cause on, and the ACLU, would put them in the same process as every other agency. So when the Board of Elections makes their rules, they have to follow the same procedures as any other agency in Rhode Island. And I will point out, I believe that the Board of Elections is either in support of this or they're at least not objecting to this.
I was going to ask about this. Have you had conversations with them?
I have not had direct conversations, but I did meet with John Marion about it, and he feels very passionate about it. So, and it was in last year, so I think it's got a good shot of going this year.
Okay, pieces of legislation of importance to Representative Joe Shikarchi. Let's go broader now here. We did just see last week a new poll by the building trades regarding the POSOX proposal for the Apex building. We did hear from the speaker that he received the poll, had some questions about the questions. Where do things stand with the POSOX?
The POSOX are the legislation was passed by the Senate. It's over to the House. I think we had a caucus on it. I think it's been universally known that that piece of legislation from the House perspective needs some work. And I think we're in the process of doing that. Now, are we able to get it to a point where we think it's a good piece of legislation that protects the taxpayers and moves forward? I don't know. We'll have to see. But I know the speaker's coming on your show later on, and I'm sure you're going to ask him that question. He's been a little bit more involved in that decision than I am. But, we have people in our caucus who are very strongly in favor of it, and we have people in our caucus who are very strongly against it. So we're doing the balancing test. We're weighing it. We're trying to find that I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and go to work and see what I can do to make this happen.
And there are really a lot of undecideds. Do you think people are kind of firmly in camps, or are there a lot of folks that are still waiting to see, especially, as you mentioned, there's probably going to be revised legislation. I'm assuming that there's a lot of, let's see what that looks like.
I think that's part of it. I also think that, some people have passionate constituents who feel strongly one way or the other. Then there's some constituents who have very little contact with their representatives. So those representatives have a little bit more of a leeway and a little bit more of a ability to see what the final product is. Before some legislators get contacted by their constituents, say, I'm adamantly opposed to it, don't do it. Some say, I'm adamantly in favor of it, it's a great piece of legislation, do it. Then there's the ones in the middle.
What have you been hearing from your constituents?
I have doing a survey. The survey hasn't been completed, but I don't have final numbers, but I think it's around, and again, this is in process, around 50-50.
50-50, and we'll see the results. You'll put those out there when you have them.
I don't know yet, but I'll share them with you. I don't know if I'll publicize to the whole world, but if you want them. You guys have done some polling yourself.
We have done some polling with John Del Vope up at Harvard. We're going to be working with him as well moving forward, again, to get the temperature gauge, not just on the POSOX, but it's an election year. There's going to be a lot that we're going to be keeping the pulse on. But as you mentioned, Leader, with new legislation, that's a new game changer with people having to react to.
Yep.
Do you think we have enough time being here? It's just beginning of March, but to go through that process if there is revised legislation?
Yes, I think so, because it's been around for a while. It's not a new piece of legislation. It's been around. It's been around in some people's mind 3 years, other people a year or 2 years. So yes, I do think there's time. I don't know what the final outcome will be, but I do think there's time.
Okay, let's go to a question that has Then in recent weeks, since the most recent school shooting in Florida, we have seen this red flag legislation. We've heard this from the speaker on it. We did see the governor take an executive order on it, but the legs really reside in the assembly to make any action forward.
So there's a lot. Every year, there's an awful lot of gun legislation that comes in, and for the most part, most of those legislative initiatives don't pass. Last year, we passed a domestic violence bill, which was very important regarding gun safety for domestic abusers. This year, I think I'm a co-sponsor of 3 pieces of legislation who I think they have a good shot of going, and that's the bump stock bill, and that bill prevents bump stocks that would have certainly had an impact in Las Vegas. The other bill is the red flag bill, as you talked about, which would allow police, and I want to talk about that in a minute, but would allow police and authorities to red flag someone and take their weapon away for a short time until there's a hearing before a judge. Mm-hmm. And that way they're able to prove whether they're stable enough and to have a piece of legislation, a piece of firearm or not. And then the third is to raise the age from 18 to 21 to own basically a rifle or a shotgun.
And we just saw up here people turning out in support just recently for gun control measures. And do we expect, huge turnouts for if these bills get hearings?
They're always large turnouts. There are certain bills that are always large turnouts. When we were talking before about the red flag bill, 2 years ago, the General Assembly, I sponsored a bill called First Aid Mental Health. Okay. Senator Archibald did the Senate version of that, and that prepared policemen to go through nationally certified, recognized mental health. And they're able to decide, is Kate Nagel crazy and she should have a gun, or is Kate Nagel not? So they're trained, they're getting proper training. So I feel very comfortable with the police making that decision initially and then ultimately by a court of law and a judge.
And what have we been hearing from the NRA and gun advocacy groups saying their response to red flag legislation? Are they going to push back and say there's no situation in which you can take guns?
I don't know what they're going to do, but and I've been getting constituent emails on both sides of the equation, so we'll have to wait and see what happens.
And also, let's talk a little bit about the budget. There's obviously big issues moving forward. How do you think that is going to be tackled in 2018? When we've seen these kind of one-off measures, we've seen stopgaps, we've seen early retirement buyouts by the governor. Talk a little bit about for sports gaming.
That's a very unique element of the budget because as of today, it's not legal to have sports betting anywhere in the country other than in Nevada. And some small amounts. I think Delaware and Oregon have limited amounts of sports betting. But there's a anticipation by this administration and other states. We're not unique in that respect, and other states regarding the ability to have the Supreme Court allow sports gambling. And if that's the case, we're going to be ready so we can get up and running quickly and hopefully get some of that revenue. How much revenue, I don't know, but there are always projections. I think the governor has put a projection of about $25 million. So hopefully the Supreme Court will rule in the favor of the state of New Jersey that would allow sports betting and that rather will be up and running. And if not, then we have a $25 million budget hole to fill. But we'll fill it. We do every year. Every year there's always a give and take in the budget. Every year we talk about, keep in mind we're talking about a $9 billion budget.
And so we were talking about a $16 million shortfall potentially this year, but the following year we're looking at a potential as big as $200 million. How does the state even begin to tackle that?
Those are called outliers, structural deficits, and what basically has to be, we have to control our spending. We cannot continue to spend on everything. State of Rhode Island is not a big bucket of money that anybody can just glom into and take some out of it. The state of Rhode Island is limited resources, and we have to control our spending. We have to prioritize it. Again, it's $9 billion to take care of our safety net, make sure that we take care of the programs that actually need to be funded, and the other stuff we have to do a balancing test and a priority test.
And finally, while I have you here, and I'm looking at my laundry list of things to talk about, what are the important items that we haven't hit upon for the rest of the session?
I think we've hit upon them. I think the poor socks, I think guns, and the budget, and that's pretty much it. Those are the 3 biggest issues that we have to deal with in General Assembly. There's always something else that hasn't come up yet, So we'll see what happens. I don't know what that'll be, but we'll see it as the process moves forward, and we'll go forward.
Before I let you go, you've got a pretty big war chest, leader.
I don't know about that.
You're always in the tops list. What are the plans moving forward?
I don't have any plans. I plan on running for re-election. Like a good Boy Scout, always prepared. I'm grateful. People have to remember that I've been involved in public service in a kind of like a different capacity than people see me now for over 30 years. So I have supported and helped many candidates over the years. And in the reality is when I decided to enter elected office, they have overwhelmingly supported me, and I'm grateful for that support. It's broad-based. It's primarily all Rhode Island money, a lot of Warwick money, a lot of clients, friends, and family.
Okay, so tell viewers anything else you want them to know while you're here today.
I think this on live. This is a great medium. I welcome you to the State House. Please continue to do this. I think it's very important that we as legislators connect directly to the voters and the constituents. And I welcome you here, and I say thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Majority Leader Joe Shikarchi.
My pleasure, Kate. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Terry, how are you?
How are you?
Good, buddy. How are you?
I'm not letting you go.
I'm right here.
No, I'm already kidding.
All right.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Go Local Live at the Rhode Island State House. This is the first day of broadcasting live, and I'm happy to introduce a familiar face. She's been in studio in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, but we're catching Representative Patricia Serpa.
It's nice to see you again, Kate.
You
Thank
as well. There's a lot going on up here today, and there's an oversight hearing, chair of the oversight committee.
Yes.
Talking about the training school today. Let's start with that.
We're talking about the training school. We expect to get some updates, as you know, and as your listeners, I hope, know, the child advocate made some very specific recommendations, as well as the state police. I believe the director of the ACI was in. They had some very specific recommendations. And as far as I know, Kate, unfortunately, not many, if any, are in place. The JPWs, the juvenile program workers, who are like the guards for the young people, they were supposed to be outfitted with some special uniforms, some radios, some equipment. They don't have that yet. Some technology that wasn't working isn't working yet. So I don't think that we're going to hear everything I was hoping to hear.
Well, that's the point of the oversight committee, is to keep tabs on what's going on.
Correct.
Do we have a sense? Are we going to hear this afternoon? Is it budgetary? Is it, structural, why these changes haven't been put in place yet?
Kate, I honestly don't know the answer to that problem. And if we had a superintendent, that would be helpful. And we've been without a superintendent now I've kind of lost track. They had interviews. They had one viable candidate. I've done a little bit of research on my own, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yep.
And they were offering the job to a police officer in one of the cities. And when he learned about the environment there, he chose to stay in his current employment. So this
is that a big hurdle? I mean, the difficulties facing the training school, the folks who work there every day, to find a person who wants to take that helm.
They need leadership. I mean, you know that all of the people under you are willing to follow an enigmatic, enthusiastic leader. And I hear from the JPWs on the inside who contact me via social media that the changes haven't been enacted. They still don't know whom to answer to for whom, that there's little administrative support for them. So what are we going to do? Wait for another riot? I hope not.
How much do you get this sort of inside intel by folks who work there but are scared to say anything publicly, but just say, Chair, you need to know what's going on?
Kate, it happens all the time. Whether it's DHS workers, whether it's the JPWs, whether it's DCYF workers, they're always afraid for their jobs. They're afraid for retribution. And I understand that. And I have never, ever, ever, since I've been chair of this committee, violated confidentiality. No, I've never used anyone's name.
So we're keeping tabs on the training school today, House oversight at the Rise here at the State House, but keeping tabs on other things you have as well. Let's start with where things are at with DCYF.
Well, with DCYF, we're hearing from the child advocate today. She's going to be reporting on a group home, Blackstone Valley, I forget the whole name. And frankly, it sounds like it was run like a criminal enterprise. Drugs being sold out of there, young people being transported in and out of the home for sexual purposes, the workers sleeping on the job, no documentation, no record keeping, using the banned sexual aversion therapy. In other words, if you come in with some transgender issues, trying to convert you into your physical gender. So everything they were doing wrong. I believe we have since closed it. I hope that's what we hear from the advocate today.
And we've seen continued issues that you keep tabs on with DCYF. And one of the things that was addressed last year was understaffing just folks who are able to go out and keep tabs on a myriad of issues at the DCYF. Are they doing a better job? And are you seeing in this proposed budget the ability to increase staffing?
Well, I don't think in this budget there's an ability to increase staffing, but I do want to give Dr. Picola credit. She walked into a situation where the acting director before her, Jamia McDonald, who was sent into DCYF to save some money, she saved some money by not filling 42 social work positions that were budgeted for, by the way. And those 42 social workers would actually go out to the families, work with the parents. So when you're minus 42 social workers, that work falls on the people who are working. So Dr. Picola's done a good job of trying to fill those, but we're learning there's a turnover after a few weeks. It's certainly not work cut out for everybody. So there's a turnover there, which is also problematic.
Tell viewers what exactly this turnover looks like.
Well, I don't have exact numbers what the turnover is, but in any new place of employment, obviously your new employer has to train you, kind of get you used to the climate, to the workspace environment, and you need a few weeks, no matter what new job you take on. You need a few weeks, sometimes a few months, to see if you're a good fit with that company. So many of the people taking these jobs, after a few weeks on the job and shadowing experienced workers and find out just how difficult this work is, they say, it's not for me, and they walk away. And I get it.
So facing the DCYF challenges, you talk about the staffing ability, and understaffing is a difficult one to overcome. What else is needed to really improve the conditions across the board?
One thing we definitely need to work towards, and Jennifer Griffith, the child advocate, and Dr. Cola are working towards getting more foster families in.
Okay.
Because I just mentioned that group home, not that they're all like that, but you know as well as I do that children do better in a family environment with some other children who maybe can model good behavior with a loving, even a single parent.
Yeah.
You know, one good single parent is better than being one of many in a group home. So Dr. Picola and Jennifer are doing some outreach in the various communities. We'll hear hopefully from them today how successful that is being.
So a push for foster homes.
A push for foster homes. I think Dr. Picola said that she needed 200 or 250 good foster homes to kind of drill down into the population into group homes. And, you know, the money we spend on the group home, which is considerable, millions, maybe we can transfer that money and pay the foster families a little bit more to take on, especially the challenging children. They have multiple challenges. I mean, they don't come from the best environments. They don't come from great backgrounds. They haven't been exposed to good parenting for the most part. So I have no problem with paying those foster families a little more.
Okay, looking for outcomes from DCYF, going from the training school to DCYF. Let's talk about UHIP.
UHIP is still a problem. I'm most disappointed for all taxpayers in that we bought into this new computer system and into this new project because it was supposed to be a money saver for everybody. Now we have spent $500 million. We're up to $500 million in spending. Some of it federal, some of it state, but we're all state and federal taxpayers. And we learned at the last meeting that there will be no savings realized this year, and that's a gross disappointment.
So finally, no savings realized this year. Are we in a better position right now in March 18 than we were in March 17?
Well, in terms of numbers, waiting in line, and applications not processed, instead of 17,000 applications not being processed, as opposed to now 4,000 not being processed.
Still 4,000.
I suppose. It's still 4,000.
Okay.
I mean, 10 is way too many. So are we making progress? I guess a little bit, but it's like crawling to home base on your belly. It's an inch at a time, an inch at a time.
And you're going to continue to be looking over it as House Oversight Chair.
Absolutely.
Well, I know you've got the committee hearing shortly, so
we will.
Chair Serpa, I appreciate your taking
My
the time
pleasure,
to come
Kate.
over
Anytime
today. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll let you go around the corner.
Thank you.
House Oversight Chair Patricia Serpa here to let us know about what's going on with UHIP, DCYF, and the training school this afternoon. There will be a hearing afterwards as well. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with our next guest.
I was ready to walk off with your
State
microphone. I said, I'm going to say, what's in the pocket here?
It's easier to do off the camera. You want to put the mic on? You got it.
I am.
Where's the makeup?
One minute.
All right.
I need you to, my. Okay.
Where do I look?
Me and mostly the camera.
Okay.
We're good. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to GoLocal Live at the Rhode Island State House. I'd like to welcome Speaker of the House, Nicholas Mattiello.
Thank you, Kate.
Our second handshake here. Well, thanks for coming down. It's going to be a busy day here at the State House today. It's our first broadcast from the State House. We've had Majority Leader Joe Shekarchi. We've had House Oversight Chair Patricia Serpa, but wanted to get a sense from you on a number of issues. Let's talk a little bit about red flag legislation. We heard from the governor that she had an executive order, but the teeth really lie within the assembly, do they not?
Yes. I mean, what you need to we need to pass legislation for these extreme risk restraining orders so that we can give the tools that are needed to the police and to the judiciary so that we can, in fact, get firearms out of the hands of of persons that shouldn't have firearms, dangerous people. So we're working on that legislation. We're reaching out to the Senate. We're coordinating our scheduling of the bills, and I'm anxious to have a hearing so that we can hear from the public, hear both sides of the issue, and have a bill that is ready to go.
So you must be hearing from all sides about this, from gun control advocates and as well as gun rights advocates. What have you been hearing from the NRA and the Second Amendment Coalition about this particular piece of legislation?
I have not heard anything directly, but what I'm hearing is they're concerned about the specificity of the language and to make sure it's not overly broad and that the appropriate due process is there. I am not hearing from any of my colleagues, do not do it, just get it right and make sure it's targeted enough and specific enough. So, I think we all share the viewpoint that we should provide the tools to the police and the judiciary to get weapons out of the hands of dangerous folks. So we're going to work to accomplish that.
And tell viewers, do we have a sense of time frame from this? We heard from the governor, again, this executive order, but as you've just said, it lies within the assembly to take action. What do you have a sense for time frame?
I would like to get something posted within the next week and a half, 2 weeks. Let's have our initial hearing. Let's get some feedback, and then let's move along as quickly as we can. My goal is sooner rather than later on that legislation. It's an important piece of legislation, and I want to make sure we get those tools out to our law enforcement and our judiciary as quickly as possible.
Okay, well, it's something that's very much been in the news as of late. Something else that has as well, the POSOCs. We just heard from the labor unions that they were polling about statewide opinion about it. Now, as we know, it rests in the House right now. What's next?
We're having discussions, and we'll keep talking on it. I think the POSOCs want to stay in the state of Rhode Island. I want them to stay in the state of Rhode Island, but I also want legislation that's well thought out and that protects the taxpayers' interest. And so right now we're going to have conversations with them. The polling that I saw confirmed everything I ever believed. It confirmed the GoLocal poll. The numbers were pretty close, and so we have resistance with the public. I believe that roughly 2 out of 3 people don't like the current proposal, and we have to work on shifting some risk and making changes so that the public is comfortable.
And what are the options that are sort of on the table? I might be asking you for the secret sauce here, but we've seen what's come from the Senate. But what are the discussions that are in play to tweak in this legislation?
Well, to be perfectly frank with you, Kate, and I hate to admit this, I don't know. Because I've always been saying I'm an attorney. As an attorney, I usually have a client that I'm advocating for and negotiating for, so I know what they're willing to do. The client here, so to speak, is the public, and there's a lot of diverse viewpoint within the vast public. So I'm trying to look at the polling and to see what moves people, because those are the types of things that you have to get in the legislation, and those are the protections that you get the public. Within the poll, they said if you do this, if you do that, if you do that, and the numbers come up. Mm-hmm. So perhaps the legislation should look at making sure that those things are guaranteed so that we can say these are the things that the public wanted. And I don't know where that discussion is going to go. It's going to be an honest discussion. I'm going to make sure that the public's interest is protected. And if the POSOCs in the state can come along with that being accomplished, then we can have a fruitful discussion.
Speaking of conversations, have you had any conversations with the Senate President about the potential for revised legislation?
We have not spoken about this. The Senate has passed it. They did a good job. They spent a lot of time working on this legislation. I give them a lot of credit, and they give us a product to work with. So now we're going to take their product, we're going to talk to the public, and we're going to talk to the POSOCs and see what we can do. And it's easier to speak to the POSOCs than it is to the public, only because there's so many different viewpoints out there, and you want to be respectful of as many viewpoints and as many people as you can. And my goal is to try to make sure our government is aligned with the will of the public and that everybody's happy with a final product, if there is a final product.
And I know I asked you about time frame for the red flag legislation. Any sense of time frame for the POSOX?
No, not at all. I will tell you that I'm going to meet with folks, not directly from the POSOX, but I'm going to meet with folks as early as within the next week, and we'll see where those conversations go.
Okay. And finally, let's talk a little bit about the budget, going through the process of hearing budget articles. We've talked about this before. We do know that we're looking at this potential $60 million deficit for this year, even larger for the coming one. You know, we've seen year in, year out ways to try to address this. We've seen the early buyouts from the governor's office. Is there a sense that, you know, we've tried these sort of one-offs, and do you have serious concerns about the future of the budget?
This is a very difficult budget, Kate. Very, very difficult. I have no doubt that the budget that we pass will be a good budget, even in difficult, lean times. It'll be a good budget. However, you know, there's a lot of work to be done. There's gonna need to be a lot of public hearings. We're gonna get a lot of input, and we'll see where this particular budget goes. We have to control spending. The departments are still overspending. That is a concern to me. That is a concern to our finance committee. Departments have to start controlling spending much better. Right? And we're never going to get our budget under control until we have the systems in place to control that. That is within the executive branch, and we have to figure out a way to control spending. We haven't been able to yet.
So as we stand here, folks probably can't see, but right behind us, they're having a press conference in support of an inspector general. What's your sense on that proposal?
Well, I mean, I think it's, you know, the idea is great. You know, the idea is you create an office of inspector general, and it's going to save you money right off the get-go. The problem is that's a big office. I look at it as a department. You have to hire investigators. You have to hire support staff. You have to rent space. You're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. And then you have to figure out, are they going to be elected? Are they going to be appointed? Who's going to do the appointment? You're talking a big expense. So when I look at it in light of this budget, I see expense. I don't see savings. So we have a big expense. And don't forget, they're not in charge of policy. The General Assembly and the governor still do the policy. They just pick up the missteps. So if there's no missteps, you end up with a ton of expense with nothing to balance it off. So I see expense in a big new department, and that causes me a lot of pause.
And finally, one of the last things that we had talked about last, you were in studio at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center talking about the healthcare arena. Now we've seen Lifespan enter the conversation with Care New England and partners. What have conversations been around this, and what's your sense? I mean, you're at the sort of 10,000-foot level, but as this moves forward, do you have concerns?
I have a lot of concerns about our healthcare delivery system. It's probably our largest employer. I know that Lifespan is our largest employer. Our citizens are dependent upon that system for their health care. And I want to make sure that the system is, number one, healthy, that it's competitive with the systems in Massachusetts, yes, and that folks stay in Rhode Island for their elective care and don't necessarily get forced to take a drive into Massachusetts. So it's of vital importance on a number of different levels. And you're right, my perch is at 10,000 feet, and there's a lot of discussions going on, but I'm trying to keep an eye on it.
Well, I appreciate it, Speaker, to pick your brain on some of the hot topic issues. Anything else you want to bring up on your agenda, or do you have to take off here?
No, I don't have to take off, but nothing. We're working hard, and we're trying to serve the public as best we can, and the budget's my biggest priority. So I look forward to the hearings, and I pay a lot of attention to the hearings and the budget, and we will get a product out there that the public's proud of, even in difficult times.
Okay. Speaker of the House, Nicholas Mattiello, I appreciate you taking the time. I'll let you go. We'll both go around the corner.
Thank you. And
don't go anywhere.
Congratulations. This is a great program.
Thank you. First show will be here weekly on Thursdays. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Go Local live from the Rhode Island State House. Appreciate you tuning in for this first show here. And to wrap it up, Senate President Dominic Ruggiero, I appreciate you're taking the time. You've got the Senate chamber right over his shoulder. He's going to be heading back for the business at hand. But I wanted to get an update from you on a number of things that are important to you. And I want to start off with St. Joe's Pension Fund. You've got legislation in place. This is regarding the pension fund collapse. Looking at it last year, looking at it again this year. Tell us a little bit about your position.
Yes, obviously I'm a little concerned about what's transpired over the past year or two regarding the Fatima pension. Obviously it's in bankruptcy right now, and they've appointed a receiver to it, and they've also appointed a special attorney to handle that, Max Wistow. And I certainly want to know what happened to that money. I think that they should have had a responsibility to protect the pension money for those individuals who are currently retired and those individuals who are going to be retiring in the future. And right now that pension fund is in jeopardy. So I don't know what happened. I'm waiting to see what they come up with as far as some of the things that transpired regarding that particular situation. And that hasn't happened yet, but I'm hopeful that that will happen in the very near future, and we can enact the legislation to protect those people. That legislation that's pending, we did that for DEPCO, we did it for a number of other things, and it's something that will encourage a settlement when that comes about. So I'm hoping that that'll end up passing and protect those people and help those people as far as their pension is concerned.
Okay, I appreciate you bringing that to light here. We're going to probably talk with you more about that moving forward, but also want to talk with you about POSOX legislation. It's residing in the House right now. We're waiting to see what happens. What's your thoughts on the situation?
Well, as you know, the Senate conducted extensive hearings, over 30 hours of hearings throughout the state of Rhode Island. Everyone who wanted to have an opportunity would have had an opportunity to testify on that piece of legislation. And we're immensely proud of the product that ended up coming out from the hearings that transpired. So we hope that the House would consider that. I hate to see the POSOX leave this state. We'd end up losing over $2 million in revenue, but I think it would really hurt our economic development opportunities in our state competitiveness. So I want to see, I'm hoping that the House will consider that. I think we have a great proposal that the Senate forged, so I'm hopeful that the Speaker and the House of Representatives will consider that in the near future.
And what if the legislation is revised?
We'd certainly be willing to entertain that. We certainly don't have the market cornered on good ideas. I would hope that they would consider that, and certainly we would be amenable to any kind of changes that they would be considering.
Let's talk a little bit about the budget. I've basically asked everyone who's been here so far. We're looking at a potential $60 million shortfall this year, much more than that the year moving forward. How are we in this position year in, year out? And we continue to look at ways to address it. You saw the governor last year put forth the early buyouts. Are we going to run out of ideas to constrain these costs?
Well, I think we have to take a look at the structural situation with government. We always keep saying that the problem is structural, and we have to address that. We can't continue to keep scooping money from these accounts that we have. It's not going to continue. Something has to happen in the very near future, and that's how we have to address it, I believe.
What do you think of the governor's proposal for sports betting?
I think it's a good proposal. I have a piece of legislation that's pending now. I think it's something where we can generate some revenue immediately because we don't have to go to a referendum. And I think once the Supreme Court makes a ruling, whether they allow the states to entertain gaming, we're hopeful that we can get up and running, and that's an immediate economic transfusion to the state of Rhode Island, the way I look at it.
Final question for you while I have you here. The red flag legislation in response to the most recent school shooting, what are your thoughts?
I'm a supporter of the red flag legislation. I'm one of the co-sponsors. I think it's a good piece. We're going to take a look at it in committee. We're going to be hearing all the gun bills in the very near future, and then we'll make a decision at that time regarding red flag and everything else that will be pending.
And I did ask the Speaker, have you been hearing from gun rights activists that have concerns about this legislation, and what are they looking for?
I've been hearing from both groups. I've been hearing from those opposed to guns and the automatic weapons and the high-capacity magazines, but I've also been hearing from the members of the NRA, those individuals, law-abiding individuals who are a little concerned about taking guns away from them when they haven't done anything illegal. So we're going to look at both sides of the issue, and hopefully we can do something that's in the best interest of the citizens of Rhode Island.
Well, I know it's one of the priorities of the both chambers moving forward, so I'm glad you were able to give us a little insight on that. Well, Senate President, I'm glad you came Go Local Live here at the State House. We appreciate it. Look forward to talking with you in the future, and we'll have you on soon.
Congratulations on your first endeavor here. I hope you have many more.
Okay, thank you.
Kate.
Take care. Take care, President. Okay, everyone, that just about wraps up the first day at Go Local Live at the Rhode Island State House. We appreciate your tuning in. We're going to kick it back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center at 4 o'clock for Molly O'Brien. Ray Rickman kicks off with his big view. We'll be back tomorrow in the studio, but every Thursday moving forward here at the Rhode Island State House. I'm Go Local News editor Kate Nagel.